Hello, my beauties. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk with Jared Schuster, yogi and life coach, about how to alchemize your life by turning your pains and your suffering into gains and gaining momentum in your life. So let's get started. Jared, I was just looking at your website, Spark of Consciousness, and I was hoping that you could give us a little breakdown of who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I know right before we hit record, we were talking about this new life that you're bringing into our world. And shout out to everybody listening. It's a time to celebrate this beautiful mama right here. So good to be bringing new life into our world. We need it right now. So a little bit about who I am, what I do. You said my name is Jared Schuster. I'm a spiritual guide, spiritual coach. I go by many different titles. My business, as you said, or brand is called Sparks of Consciousness. I teach people how to become alchemists of their life, how they can turn the lead, the weight, the baggage, the stuff that we hold on to for so much of our lives. And I guide people to releasing that and turn it into gold. How can you use the hardest things you've been through to empower you to move forward in your life? I've gained these tools from travels around the world. I studied with yogis in India, shamans in Ecuador. I spent a year in Ecuador studying under shamans. We can get into my story if you'd like to hear about that. But it's just been a journey of studying from the greats and doing my own inner work and a whole lot of inner healing, releasing a lot of traumas that I've been through and using it to fuel my purpose and my passion, which is to be here as a guide and to serve others who are looking to transition or attract more success or just be a better version of themselves.
Awesome. I love that. I would actually love for the backstory on kind of how you shifted your life from, that regular 9 to 5 and feeling like there was something more for you to where you are now and how you turned your pain into gain, essentially.
Yeah, of course. So fasten your seatbelts because we're about to go on a little ride right now.
Okay.
So I lost my father when I was 6 years old to the AIDS virus. This was the early 90s. This is, the first pandemic that my family lived through. Being 6 years old and losing my dad, I didn't quite understand or comprehend at the time what that really meant, what life was going to look like without having my father be present. For me, my coping mechanism from a very young age quickly became about money. I learned very early on that I was very talented and skilled at communication and connecting and networking. And that really led me to sales. At 7 years old, I started my first business. I was flipping beanie babies back in the day. I was selling juice boxes at school. At 13, I had my first job. I just started hustling at a very young age for no other reason than that's just what I was attracted to. I learned that money could buy me things. And as a kid, I wanted things, whether it was a new toy or a new car or what. So I was pretty much setting myself up for a pretty conventional life in the business world. In high school, I studied real hard, followed the conventional path of the should. You should get good grades because you should get to a good college. So because you should get a good job, and then you should do that job until you either drop dead or retire. And so I went to Purdue University, which is at the time was one of the top 10 business schools in our nation. Got my degree, and then upon graduating, started interviewing all over the country for companies that resonated with me. Had a few offers, and none of them really clicked until the last job that flew me out to California. So I'm from the Midwest originally, suburb of Chicago, and I had never been to California. And the second that I got off that plane, I just saw, the oceans, the mountains, and I was like, wow, I'm sold. Whatever this job is, I'm going to take it if I get the offer, of course. So I did the interview, they gave me an offer, and so began my life. The life that I was ready to start living outside of college, start pursuing this career, working for an education startup. The money was promising, the culture was there. And then about 9 months into that job, I started to learn how to surf. And surfing for me became so much more than just a sport. It became a very spiritual activity. It connected me with nature unlike I had ever experienced in my life. And it took me a few months to really learn how to do it and how to catch my first wave. But the day that I caught my first wave was a day that, I'll never forget. I came into work that next day, and that was the day that I felt what people feel 20 years into their career, and that's burnout. I sat down and I was like, man, my office feels a lot smaller than it usually does, and this work is not exciting me. And the experience that I just had in the ocean just yesterday was something that I know that I need. Like that fuels me more than I've ever felt fueled before. And so in that moment, I was like, I don't want to do this for the next 40 years of my life. There has to be something more. There's something so much more for me. I have so many dreams, and I don't want to sacrifice my dreams to pursue someone else's full time, not allowing myself to have time to go after my own dreams. Otherwise, for me, it's like, what's the point of being here then? And so, very quickly after that kind of realization, I decided to leave this dream job that I worked so hard to attain. The universe, out of all places to lead me, led me to go work in Malibu, California at a high-end sushi restaurant. And for those of you who don't know, it's like Malibu is home to our rich and famous, the world's rich and famous, the people we read about, people we watch on TV, the people who we create all these stories that they must be so happy because they're financially successful. And at a young age, I became a bartender there. And I say your bartender is pretty much like a therapist. And I was having real life conversations with some very, very influential and powerful people. And they were really pulling back a curtain for me that I had never really observed. And that was money isn't equaling happiness. These people have it all materially, but they're lacking so much. A lot of them are on their fourth, fifth, sixth marriage. Their kids don't talk to them. They're struggling in debt. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses next door to them in the bigger mansion and the nicer car. And so that was really like this perception shift in me. And it was like, okay, well, I made it all the way here to learn this lesson. If money's not going to make me happy, well, then what is? And so I decided to take 3 months off, and I backpacked all around Europe. It was the best, 20-something-year-old European trip you could imagine. Different cities every day, different countries, partying like crazy, connecting with so many different backgrounds and cultures, really getting out of my comfort zone and seeing this beautiful, magical world and community of backpackers that exists. So after those 3 months, I came back. I kind of fell into those patterns, back to work. And then 9 months into that, I was like, I need something more. I need a different journey. I need to step away again from Los Angeles and just out of that culture right now. And so I was like, okay, I need to take 6 months off. What does that look like? I knew that Thailand was on the list to start studying the Buddhist culture. I knew Indonesia was on the list to chase the endless surf and go score some waves. And from there, I didn't know what else was next. And about Christmas Day, I was sitting in a little rented room in Indonesia, and I was looking at a world map and trying to figure out where to go after my time in Indonesia was going to come to an end. And all I could see on that map was India. And I figured out how to get a visa into India, and I booked myself into a 30-day, 200-hour yoga teacher training. And it was one of the most powerful 30 days of my life, studying under yogis there, connecting with lots of different people, learning this ancient practice and these ancient tools. And is in that moment, I'm like, all right, I have my new calling. I'm going to come back to the States. I'm going to be a yoga teacher. I'm going to come bring the East to the West. This sounds great. All right. And so I traveled around India a little bit more. And then I came home from that trip. And I was home for 2 weeks. And I was driving home from work. I was back at that restaurant for 2 weeks, driving home at night. And I was involved in a head-on collision. And I had both of my legs broken, scarring all over my body, and just like a whole lot of trauma to heal. And that's when I say the whole reason, when I look back on that story, the whole reason I went to India was to give me the tools to get through this chapter. It wasn't about me sharing these tools yet with the world. It was about me living them first, of going within, using my breath, learning what that means, getting comfortable with the stillness, keeping myself full, holding space for myself. What does that all mean? So
Mhm.
it was a year in my bed, took everything away from me, no surf, no walking, no working, just me and healing. And as soon as I was well enough to walk again, I booked myself into a 12-day, 5 ceremony shamanic healing retreat in the Andes Mountains of Ecuador. And my second ceremony there, just it was the hardest 18 hours of my entire life. But in those 18 hours, I understood what it meant to release that baggage that I was holding on to since I was a child. I reconnected with my deceased father. I healed that wound. I reconnected with my spiritual self. I connected to source, to Mother Earth, Mother Nature. And after that ceremony, I went to the owner of the center and I just was like, I have to be a part of what you have going on here. I have so much more work to do on myself. I need to learn how to use these gifts to help others. So she said, come back in a few months and you can live here and work here. So I went back to LA. I sold everything I owned down to a backpack, 44 liters, about that big. And I moved my whole life to Ecuador and became a manager of this center. And people from all walks of life, all over the world, would come seeking out very alternative, very soul level healing. And in my time there, I was part of close to 200 people's very unique and very personal and intimate and vulnerable healing journeys. Everything you can think of came through there: traumas, cancers, abuse, disease, addiction, whatever. And I'd say majority of people left that 12 days a much higher version of themselves with new tools to now apply to their life. It wasn't the cure. It was presented with tools, just like a yoga practice. You get these tools and you bring them to your life and you bring them out into the world. And that's where the practice happens. So
Yeah.
my time there came to an end. I moved to a little fishing village on the coast to just reintegrate back into society, surfed a whole bunch, had a lot of time to process and download what my time in the mountains was. And then Ecuador came to an end. That chapter came to a close, and I was led pretty divinely to where I am today, and that's San Diego, to do the work that I'm doing right now.
It's beautiful. I feel like a lot of people could have got stuck really fast um, after that traumatic situation, and you were able to turn it around and use it as a way to connect with other people, to connect with yourself, and basically take a look at your life and say, well, what am I going to do different from here on? What am I going to
Mm.
make this mean for me? Because I think a lot of people, they create stories about what stuff means, and that can make them get stuck really fast. And it seems like you chose a really powerful story which helped you move through in such a beautiful way. And I think that's awesome. Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So that's a little bit about how you got into yoga as well. So now that you're more on the life coach end of things, how much does, because yoga, I know a lot of people in the West, they just think that yoga is the physical asana, moving your body. Obviously, for anyone who's done the training, that we know that it's actually like a lifestyle. It's a, like you said, a toolbox. How much do you think that the actual physical asana is important in the whole grand scheme of what yoga is and spiritual journey? Is it something you practice regularly and that you help other people to practice as well?
I really like that question. Thank you. The asana practice to me is super important, but especially in the West, we really cut and paste and make things convenient for us. I think that there's this school of thought that you need to follow certain structure. I've studied many different schools of yoga. I have more than just the 200-hour training, and
Mhm.
there's different philosophies, and they all work very differently. But at the core of an asana practice is this opportunity to connect with your body. That's really ground level for me, and that's really what matters. It doesn't matter if there is no right and wrong. I hear that a lot. I don't do yoga. I'm not good at it. I don't stretch. I'm not flexible. And it's like you've already talked yourself out of the core of what it is like it's this practice, and it's this practice of uniting, yoga to unite, to connect body, mind, and spirit. So I know that in our cultures, we put a lot of emphasis on the physical practice. We want to physically look better, feel better, move better, and that's all wonderful. But through your training, you start learning that the asana practice, the whole point of doing an asana practice is to prepare you for shavasana. And shavasana is, to those who aren't familiar, the corpse pose or the dead pose or just laying down. It's when you can reap the benefits. Asana practice prepares you for meditation. So at the peak of yoga is the opportunity that you are just connected on all three, the body, mind, and soul level, that you can fully surrender into yourself and go within. And I think this is something that isn't emphasized enough in the way that we teach. I do practices in studios and whatnot, and I mean, there's some amazingly skilled teachers out there, but there's also like, let's get through this. Okay, 2 minutes of shavasana to lay down, and it's like, this is the pose that we all need to be surrendering in more. And we can see in our world outside around us, like every single human on this planet this past year has gone through a collective trauma. And in order to heal that and get through that, we all need to spend more time coming to that quiet and coming to that stillness. How can we get there? Many different ways. For me, I allude my surfing is part of my asana practice. That connects me so much to the body, that connects me and brings me to the present moment. So whatever you're doing to be connected to the body, whether it's just eating good food and fueling yourself, what's the materials that you're reading, consuming, the television, the YouTube channels, what are you allowing into your life? All that to me is part of the yoga practice. The studio is the place where you go and you recharge and you connect and you find community and you find like-minded people. But the practice happens off the mat. The practice happens, how are you showing up in the world? And when you're connected more with yourself on those levels, your world becomes so much more beautiful. Your world becomes brighter. You're able to make change in the lives of other people just by being you. And to me, that's the power of a yoga practice.
I love that. And I 100% agree. It's so much more than just that 30 minutes or an hour on your mat. It's like most of my profound changes have been off the mat.
Mm.
So thank you for that. How would you say your life has been affected mentally since you started having this toolbox to work with? Like when you were a kid, it sounds like you were a big go-getter as it was, maybe not very self-deprecating to begin with. But I know in my own journey, the biggest changes that I seen was my mental health, going from constantly thinking everyone was out to get me, constantly beating myself up for making mistakes, to like being able to recognize those patterns and apply them and use that toolkit in that way. So how has it affected your life, and what's the difference in your mental health since you had this toolkit to work with?
I mean, you kind of alluded to it when I was finished sharing about my journey, about staying in that mindset of where are you choosing to stay trapped?
Yeah.
And so every time I hit a bump in the road or a setback or a challenge, for one, it's the question of how long am I choosing to stay in this mindset? I call it the victim consciousness.
Yeah.
And every single person has a choice of how long. It's an individual choice, and there is no right and wrong. And I think there is power in sitting in that for a moment. Answers do get revealed, but at some point you need to ask yourself, does this feel good? Is the energy that I'm carrying with me about a situation that's attached to me, but not, it's all my choice of what I'm allowing to stay stuck with me. So in this moment, what feels best? How can I release this? And a way to release it, a practice that I love to do, is looking back on those and saying, why did this happen for me? Not why did this happen to me, but what is there to learn here? So back on the pandemic this year, every single person can look back and ask themselves that question and find silver linings in everything. My car accident, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, but it's something that I'm so grateful for every single day. It's the power of gratitude because it got me through that. It gave me even more tools. It taught me more about myself, and it led me to this moment right here. Had I not gone through that, had my dad not passed away at a young age, I would not be the person I am today. And I'm really happy with the person I am today. I'm happy with the work that I'm sharing with the world. Every single person I hope listening can be happy with the person they are today. And it's just a choice. It doesn't matter what led you to this moment right here, right now, to you and me connecting and those listening. Whenever this gets listened to years from now, you have a choice right now to write your story moving forward. You've written your whole story in the past and you've been living it this way, but today you can decide, okay, moving forward, what does my story look like? Am I going to live a bright, light, service filled life? Or am I going to stay a victim? Am I going to stay thinking the world is out to get me? Am I going to keep attracting financial destruction or jobs that I hate or relationships that don't serve me? Or am I going to say right now, enough is enough? And so this is where my tools come into play constantly because I mean I'm a human. I'm a man just navigating this world just like anyone else. But these are the places that I go to of what is there to learn here? What can I be grateful for in the hardest of things that I've been through? And how is it preparing me for what's coming? And am I excited for what's coming? And it's like the answer is yeah, why not? I can live in fear and be scared of each moment, or I can just be excited. And the more that I feel the excitement, the more the blessings start flowing.
I love that. That's a really good tool to have is that ability to question everything and think of a way to like flip it on its head. For people who really struggle with that, because I know, especially people who are just starting the work, it can be a lot harder for them to rationalize those questions. They're like, well, how do I get out of victim mode? This person actually is wrong me. This person's doing this. I can't control it. In situations that you can't control what's happening, what's your most powerful tool to control your emotions? I don't know if you've ever read the book by, I think it's Viktor Frankl or something. It's like he was in a
Answers for meaning.
yeah, and then he was said that the one thing he learned was that no matter what, no one can control what he thought.
Hmm.
That was the one thing. So, what's your go-to tool or tools to connect with that idea that I can change my thoughts, but I can't necessarily change my circumstances?
Well, I believe that your thoughts do change your circumstances. So as you start practicing this idea of flipping your thoughts, this is a practice. This is another thing that it's not an automatic. You have to start implementing it. But as you start flipping your thoughts and practicing and being consciously aware of what you're thinking and changing that script, you're not going to keep attracting external situations that are against you. You're going to start seeing your world in a completely different light. You get to choose every emotion. Nobody has control over how you're feeling about something.
Mhm.
So if somebody wrongs you, it's again asking yourself, one, why did I attract this situation? What is there for me to learn here? It's such a powerful question to ask. I do a lot of work with the mirror analogy of every single person out there is a mirror. They're a reflection of me. So the energy that I'm putting out is bouncing right back and I'm receiving it. So if I'm getting met head to head all the time, to me that's a reflection of what am I bringing to the world to welcome this in? What are my personal boundaries that I'm allowing to be crossed? So it's change your thoughts and change your life, and that's where it all starts. You get to be the creator of your world. The world is happening out here, but you're picking and choosing every detail and every circumstance that comes your way. It's how are you choosing to handle each of those circumstances? And it's take your time, take a few breaths. I think, this is a whole nother topic we could spend hours on is the power of the breath. Our breath is life. Our breath can control our entire nervous system. So when somebody hits you and you feel angry, feel what that does to your breath. You get shortened, or when you're anxious, what does that do to your breath? To slow your breath down. Take a few cleansing breaths, come to the present moment. This word mindfulness it's a buzzword right now, and it's so used all in many different ways. And it's like start studying what these words mean. These are sacred words. Mindfulness, it just means to observe, be the observer of your emotions. So
Mhm.
when you're feeling anger, as something outside yourself, how can you detach and just observe as if you're looking through the lens of someone else's eyes? And that takes you away from being hyper reactive. And I think like I'm seeing hyperreactivity constantly in our world, and this is one of my missions in life is to get people to just slow down and reconnect with that inner voice, not my voice, but your own voice. And the only way you can start hearing that is by slowing that roll down, is by not responding, by not vomiting all over each other, your opinions and your truths. You know, it's how can I hold space for this person? There's a lot to unpack when you're met with difficult circumstances. But again, it's up to you to decide how long am I going to choose for this to be difficult for.
I think there's two things you mentioned that I would say have been very helpful in my own journey, and that is boundaries and what you just said, that taking the time before reacting.
Mm,
So boundaries, for one, that's you making a choice, because people act like they don't have a choice in a lot of situations of what's happening to them. But had they just put it in a boundary and said no, then then that person's not in your space anymore. That person's not affecting you because you didn't allow them to come into it. So that one is a big one, I think. And then that taking a second to react. I forget who I talked to the other day. They said they wait 24 hours to respond if they feel triggered by something, which might not be an option in all situations. Like if your boss asks you a question, you probably can't just be like, I'll get to you in 24 hours. But having that ability to literally pause and think, how am I going to word this in a way that isn't attacking the other person, but still get the truth across? I think those are really powerful tools. I know it's completely changed the dynamic of my own marriage and my own relationship with my son. Because when you
hmm
just instantly react, you're not even listening to their side of the story anymore. You're
hmm
just spewing.
Yeah.
So I
And I
think,
think that that's a powerful thing to touch on real quick
mhm,
too, of the other side of the story.
yeah,
I work with a lot of people who are transitioning career wise and are looking for more, or they're unhappy. And a lot of the conversations about feeling attacked, this is, talk about the workplace, is feeling attacked by a boss or something. It's what is their story? In their perspective, are they attacking you? Or are you just have your walls up and are feeling attacked? Is
yeah,
your boss's intention really to irritate you, or are you irritated because it's something within you? And when you think of that, it's like, yeah, he's probably not. I work for him. He wants, the relationship's there. And this is where it's so important to start learning communication skills, how to talk, because we create the story of this guy. We put the label, this guy, this woman, she's a jerk, or whatever title we put towards it. And then we start building the confirmation bias every time they come at you. And it's like every time they come at me, I'm so angry. And it's like, well, why? And that's the key word. This is probably like a bulk of what I do a lot of coaching on is boundaries. What does it mean to put your boundaries up? And a lot of times people are scared to initiate boundaries, but once you do, you realize people respect you more. You
mhm,
gain a whole another level of respect when you do boundaries in the right way. So it's so important on all levels, in all relationships, in your most intimate relationships, in the relationships with your kids, your boss, your community. What are your personal boundaries? And do you know them? How often do you allow them to be crossed? And when they do, what are the repercussions for yourself? How can you get yourself to a place where your boundaries aren't crossed anymore?
mhm. Yeah, and it's like you said, it's kind of learning. Like you can put up a boundary and just see how it works. And you can always adjust it. It's like life isn't stagnant. You can always make adjustments as you go, and that's kind of learning about. You're learning a little bit more about yourself each day. I think when you're starting to put boundaries in, because you're like, this feels good, this doesn't. It's like you're a science experiment on your own life,
Yeah.
just trying different things to see what works for you. Um, like actual tools. So a lot of this, like why, and this questioning and always looking at how you're acting in the situation and how other people are acting, and having the ability to see, maybe flip the perspective and look through their lens. Would you say journaling or meditation, or like what tools do you find the most useful in your own practice to do this questioning and self reflection?
journaling and meditation. A meditation is one of the most underrated and most powerful tools that we all have access to. And it also comes down to redefining what meditation means to you.
Mhm.
I've noticed that that word scares a lot of people. It's very make or break. You're either all on board and get it, or you tried it once and it's not for you, and you can't sit and you can't, all the can'ts of like, my mind doesn't slow down. I can't, I don't get it. I tried it once and it doesn't work for me. And it's like, it's a practice. But what is your meditation? Find it. Let's reframe what the word means. For me, surfing, it's a time where I can disconnect from this busy world and the noisy space and just be present. I like creating music. So creating music, that's a happy place for me. Finding things that put you in the zone and whatever your flow state is. We all have it. That's your creative side, the right side of the brain. Start exercising that more, and you're gonna find that's the powerful tool. In terms of journaling, I say journaling is the secret sauce to working with me. All of my clients, we do these 1 hour calls, and the calls are transformational and powerful, but the work comes in the follow up. And I always send a 3 to 5 journal prompts after every single call. And I encourage my clients to have their journal and respond. And it's not for me. You're not answering questions for me. These journal prompts are created solely based on our conversation. So it's a time for you to reflect. Our brain is interpreting billions of signals and messages all day long, and
Mhm.
it just gets so like all over the place. And so the work is to get it out of your brain and onto paper so you can start seeing things more visually. And writing it out, there's such a power in putting pen to paper, and you get so much more clarity in that sense. So yes, journaling is so good. If you don't know where to start, I mean, reach out to either one of us, but it's find prompts and just start writing. There is no judgment. Just get it out of your head and start getting clarity around it. So journaling and meditation, yes, absolutely. Those are two very, very powerful tools.
I like how you said meditation doesn't have to be just sitting there either, because I think a lot of people get stuck just on that. And even when you said surfing for you, one thing that came up for me is I find art, like drawing for me, because I'm so focused on creating what I'm doing that I'm actually present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what can you do that creates presence in
Mm-hmm.
the moment where you're connected to what you're doing and you're not just thinking, like, when you're driving down the road and you realize, I don't know how I got on this street. I've been in La La Land for like 5 minutes. I think it's anything that takes you out of La La Land and puts you into what exactly you're doing
Mm-hmm.
could be a practice of meditation.
Absolutely. And the power of gratitude, I mentioned that a few times so far, but simple practices of one that I like to do is right when you step outside your front door, when you go through that door behind you, you take one breath, close your eyes, take a deep breath. And when you open your eyes, everything you see, just start saying thank you to it. And it will do something. It'll help change you. Thank you to the sky. Thank you to the air. Thank you to the birds. Thank you to the trees. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. And you can't help but fill yourself up and feel lighter and smile and release all the stagnant that's going on within you. So it's even simple little practices like that. Taking 2 cleansing breaths after a long day of work. It's as simple as that.
I love that. Okay, we're almost at time here. Well, I think we went a little bit over, so forgive me. Um, I wanted to ask you one kind of final question. Um, your journey, even though there was a lot of trauma in it, it sounds like you were a pretty big go getter from the start. So, what do you have to say to the people who are like, well, I've never been like that? And obviously, I know this is the story. I've never been like that. I'm just not that kind of person. I'm lazy or whatever, all those things that they tell themselves that they can't change their lives. What is some final messages that you have for them? Because I'm sure you have worked, like you said, in that spiritual center that you had all people from all walks of life with all different traumas. What would your message be to them? Anyone who feels like they're not good enough or they don't have the tools to move forward.
The I'm lazy and I'm not good enough, those are limiting beliefs. And
Mm.
there's no truth in those. Again, how long do you want to stay that way? You keep saying these words, I'm lazy. Let's flip that script. What do you want to be? If you could be, forget about who you think you are right now. 5 years from now, looking back, who would you want to be if you could be anybody? How much money do you want to have? What does your job look like? What are your relationships? What's your family life look like? Just start there. Start connecting back to your dreams. Your soul, you are here for a purpose. Every single human on this earth has a purpose. It's not for nothing that we were put here in this time and space, especially all that we've all been through in this past year. So it's up to you. Do you want to stay in that mundane? Do you want to stay in these ruts? Do you want to feel a victim of life? Or do you want to start learning how to control and empower and live your dreams? Because it's capable. You are more than capable. You have gone through what you've been through to decide now moving forward of the life that you want to live. If you feel very lost, I mean, that's what people like you and I are here to do. We are here on this earth to guide those to break through those limiting beliefs. So reach out. This is what I do professionally. Reach out to somebody. Surround yourself with people who are going to support you. Find your tribe. Get rid of the naysayers in your life and the people who have always told you to grow up or be realistic. It's like we all need to connect more with our inner child. We all need to play more. Don't take life so seriously. So, I mean, that would be my big thing is like, it's time to start dreaming and believing again. And you'll very quickly, when you decide to make that switch, you're going to see how you can start making that a reality. And nobody's immune. Suffering, we all experience suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that nobody suffers more than anybody else because all we know is our own individual suffering. But with that, you're not alone. No matter what you're going through in life, you are not alone. And there are people out there who are more than willing to support you and help you and guide you and break you out. We're not meant to go along this journey alone. We're supposed to come together and we're supposed to support each other. So you as an individual out there have to make that conscious decision of like, okay, I'm going to be a little more vulnerable and I'm going to let somebody in. And I'm going to learn from every person that I let in. And they may not all be all stars that you let in, but that's when you come back to why did this person come into my life? What did I learn from them? Even if they're the worst person, what was the learning experience that got you to today? What was the tool that was uncovered?
I love that. I think that's a great closing message. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. Where can people find you online and contact you? I'll put it at the end of the video as well in writing, just so it's easy. But just a quick overview.
Yeah, so my website is sparksofconsciousness.com. You can email me at jared@sparksofconsciousness.com. Instagram, Sparks Consciousness. LinkedIn, Jared Schuster. Facebook, Jared Schuster. I have all sorts of offerings. I have digital offerings for anybody. Created some, I call them navigations. If you have tried meditation and it doesn't work for you, I encourage you to try one of my life navigations because that's the whole intention behind why I created them. 5-minute life navigations. I have a digital course on the power of manifestation. I do group coaching, and I also offer one-on-one spiritual guidance, spiritual coaching. So reach out, even if it's just to say that you listened to this and enjoyed it. This is all about building community. So lots of places to find me, and I really hope to connect with you all out there.